Good afternoon again. Thank you for joining us for this session about how to grow and scale an airline profitably. And in Abhi's case, it would be launching, growing, and scaling an airline profitably. Our next guest, he doesn't need an introduction. You've all seen him earlier today on the keynote with Andres about doing business in real time. But I do want to briefly talk about Azul. I know a lot of you know about Azul, but under the hood, it's a fascinating story. And I've had like a front row seat to it for some time now, so I'll get started. Okay. So Azul was launched in December 2008 by David Neeleman. David Neeleman was actually born in Brazil, so there's a connection there. And when it was launched, they only had 3 destinations and about 5 aircraft. And that was 2008 December. Fast forward 15 years later, it's 174 aircraft. It's about 158 destinations. They have 27 million passengers last year, and Abhi tells me it's going to be 32 next year. And one of the really amazing things about this story is that when Azul was launched, Brazil had about 48 million domestic passengers. Now they have 88. And Azul accounts for about 50% of like the increase in the passenger traffic. And another awesome fact is that on 80% of their routes, they have no competition. When you think about it, we see airlines from all over the world. It's a pretty mind-blowing fact, right? And the best part of all of it is that Abhi has been there for the whole journey. So he was part of the founding team that actually founded the airline, along with John, who's the CEO, Alex Malfitani, who's the CFO. So he's been there for the whole journey. And so that's why we are here to talk to him. But before I begin, I have a question for you, Abhi. So how do you get from Bangalore to Brazil? Like, what was the journey like? We're really curious. So
Thanks for having me. Just a fun fact, looking at 2008, I actually drew the first schedules for Azul. The first flight number was 4060. And I did it on my laptop, and I did it all wrong. All wrong. The flights didn't even connect to each other. And so I'm very thankful now that we have a professional team that does this and a lot better than I do. So, but yeah, look, it's been a journey, a roller coaster. I'm lucky because I always loved aviation. I've loved airplanes since I was a kid, 5 years old. And I've always just done one thing, which is aviation. I studied aerospace engineering. I never studied anything else. I never studied business. I never studied IT. I just did airplanes my whole life. So I'm very, very lucky that I actually get to do every single day and, go walk on airplane wings and stuff like that. So I'm very, very lucky. So I went from India to UT Austin. Then I went to Boeing, because of course I love airplanes. Then JetBlue. At the time, JetBlue was just beginning in 2000. And I'd heard about David Neeleman, and they were doing something different. They were sort of rethinking airlines. I think the US industry today is better because of JetBlue, actually. I think all airlines in the US have gotten better because of that. And it was about bringing humanity back to air travel, a different way to treat your people. So it was kind of a cool story. So I started as an intern in JetBlue in route planning, just applied online, again, a little bit of lucky as well. And I met David there and just sort of, fell in love with his charisma and all that kind of stuff and his ways. So followed him to Azul and been there ever since.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a fascinating story. I do tell Abhi from time to time that he's living the dream of a lot of us who are like airline geeks. Even when I started my career, I always thought that, I'm going to set up an airline. Don't ask me if I was in touch with reality.
Only if you want to lose a bunch of money.
Which brings me to the next point, right? So we've heard this like many times. They say the fastest way to $1 million is, start with $1 billion and open an airline. Now, obviously your story is a little different. You've succeeded. You've attempted and succeeded where a lot of other people have failed, which is, to kind of launch an airline, grow it, and have it be relevant. 15 years, $4 billion with the kind of start you had is pretty fascinating. So we're curious, what were the initial years like? I mean, I know you said the first route was not like really connecting, but I'm sure there's a lot more to the story as you like the growing pains. What were some of the challenges? Can you talk to us about, how do you get from there to where you are today?
I mean, what's crazy is that the first business plan and today what Azul is totally different, right? And so it just goes to show that however you begin or you think you're going to be beginning is not where you end up. And that's actually a good lesson overall. It's just looking for opportunities. And even in my career, I had never in my wildest dreams thinking I would live in Brazil, but it's just kind of looking for opportunities and kind of putting yourself in the right place at the right time. And hopefully somebody gives you a shot, right? Nobody owes you anything. Nobody has to give you an opportunity. But if you're in the right place, right time, somebody will want to give you an opportunity. So at Azul is the same story. We had a business plan that probably was 30 aircraft, point-to-point service, and today we're 175, going to 200. We're a hub-and-spoke airline, actually. We're 55% connecting traffic, hence pros O&D especially. And so our business today is completely different from the original business plan, which is, I think, fascinating by itself, because you really have no idea how these things are going to go. It's impossible to predict. And it's a story of opportunity over time. Very challenging. Brazil is a challenging environment, a challenging geography. It's a huge market. 210 million local consumers. The geography is the size of the continental US, just flipped north-south instead of east-west. So it's one of the few contiguous domestic markets, right, that are big enough to actually be able to generate the demand that you need to have 200 aircraft. So the opportunity was very clear. So the first thing that I say always is, what is the reason to exist? Why do we even exist in the first place? And if Azul were to disappear, would anybody even notice, right? And so the reason we exist is Brazilians were not flying. And they weren't traveling by air because of price, because there just wasn't the connectivity. And so even though we're a low-cost airline, we actually have the highest fares in Brazil. We are not a low-fare airline. We're low-cost in how we manage our cost and how efficient we try to be. But we actually have the highest fares. And so we've grown the market. We've been responsible for more than half of the market growth, not through fares. Most, Volaris, Ryanair, Spirit, Frontier are doing it through fares. We've done it through service. And so we've provided connectivity to in between cities that never existed before. So now you can go and do business, come back on the same day, or go stay one night, come back, and it didn't exist before, right? And so that's how and for us, I think, being able to grow the market and still maintaining healthy fares, for me, is a lot more sustainable. Because anybody can have low fares. Anybody can buy airplanes, anybody can have low fares. And we've seen so many examples, I don't want to name names, but so many examples of airlines that had low fares until one day they just couldn't anymore. And obviously Southwest is amazingly successful, Ryanair incredibly successful. But it's, for me, the low fares kind of is, unless you really have the low cost, it's tough to sustain. And so we grow the market through service, through connectivity, but we actually do it through high fares. And 80% of our markets have no competition because we fly completely different network. And all of this came around, over time. I cannot claim that we had this idea 15 years ago. We didn't. And we sort of discovered along the way what the opportunities are. So we actually started with the Embraer, which is like a medium-sized aircraft, because we didn't know what the demand was. We literally had no idea. So Airbus is too big. We don't know. It's too risky. Let's go with medium-sized aircraft. Well, let's just start. And then we actually went small because there were all these small cities where we had demand. And then we went to the US and Europe, and then we had larger narrow bodies. So an exercise in just looking for different opportunities. We tried to go public 4 times. On our 4th try, we were successful, to give you an idea. Every time we were about to go, the market would close. There would be some crisis. We've been through a World Cup in Brazil. I never wish anybody, any one of you, to ever go through a World Cup in your home country. It's awful. It's absolutely terrible. And in Brazil, where every Brazilian game is a holiday. So can you imagine in 1 month, like 20 holidays? The demand is only in one direction. And our genius founder, David Neilman, came to me during the World Cup and he said, I have a genius idea. I was like, what? He's like, we're going to cap the fares. I'm like, what do you mean we're going to cap the fares? He's like, we're going to cap them and people will love us. I'm like, they will love us, I know that. So we did cap the fares, and so it's really awful. I don't do World Cup. We also had the Olympics 2 years after that. Olympics a little bit better because it's contained in one city, in Rio in our case. But still, corruption scandals, 2 impeachments, I think, along the way. So currently,
trucker strike.
We had a trucker strike, believe it or not, where we had to ground the fleet because there was no fuel. In Brazil, there was no fuel. We would walk to the grocery store because we had put gas in our cars, and we didn't want to use the gas because we don't know when the gas would come back. So we'd walk. It was kind of a surreal environment. So yeah, a lot of challenges, but we're there still. We're growing. Like I said this morning, our revenue is 76% higher, 1Q that we just announced last week versus 1Q19. In 2019, we had about a 14-15% market share. Now we're 33%. So amazing opportunities, but very challenging. And we have an amazing team.
Yeah. Thank you. And to Abhi's point about Azul not being an LCC, I travel a fair amount in Brazil. And I've never been able to kind of afford Azul. There's always a cheaper alternative. But then once you start flying Azul, the service that he talks about does stand out. Because, usually you'd think that outside of North America, service is always good compared to North America, but Azul's a cut above the rest. And for what it's worth, their app is just completely, it's just amazing.
Our app is a copy of American, United, Uber, all the other apps I could find that were nice.
Yes, and a shout out to Starling. It's his birthday, but yeah, his CIO does a fantastic job.
But talking about service and product, one thing that I think is, obviously we're at a revenue conference here, but the first report that I look at every single day is not the bookings report. It's the on-time performance. And so without on-time performance, without an operation, customers won't fly and you won't have any revenue anyway, right? So those basics really, really have to be very solid. And and the entire revenue team, the commercial organization, have to know that. They have to know where the revenue comes from. It's not just from pricing. It's come from customers really wanting to fly you for some reason. And so it's important that everybody is really connected into what's happening in the airline overall, and nobody's saying, well, that's not my problem.
Yeah, that's true. And you bring up a question of challenges. You talked about some of the challenges. So my next question has to do with, you've grown. Obviously this is a good story right now. And Brazil's a very complicated place to do business in. You're talking of state fuel taxes last night. There is all the geopolitical strife. Macroeconomic conditions. The whole 15 years you have grown have not been the best, so to speak. Right? Currency is devalued over a period of time. So given that all this is going on outside of the service itself, so what are your competitive advantages? How did you arrive at them?
Yeah.
And what are your plans to kind of sustain it and build on it?
Yeah. So, and I think this is really important for sort of revenue and commercial organizations all over. Everything we do and everything you should be doing every single day should be to create, build, or extend your competitive advantages. And so for us, it starts with our network, which is 80%, we have no competition. It starts with our product, the experience, but then it goes to other things like how everything that you do should be to extend. So our commercial strategy, right? So our sales team, their corporate discount strategy. How does their corporate discount strategy align up with the network strategy, right? So you don't give discounts where you don't need to. How does your pricing strategy line up? How does your marketing strategy line up? So everything you do should be to extend and build your competitive advantages. And again, it's really important that the entire organization knows what these are so that they can take advantage of it. So one is on the passenger side. And then we actually started 3 other businesses to take advantage of that. One is we are actually, in addition to about 30% market share, we are the largest air cargo company in Brazil with about a third market share. So we actually took our network and we realized if we just throw packages in the belly, we can generate a bunch of cargo revenue. But then it's not just cargo in the traditional sense. We actually do door-to-door. So we will come to your apartment or your house, pick up the package, and take it all the way to the buyers, right? So really e-commerce type stuff. So we are the largest domestic logistics provider in Brazil. We also, again, leveraging upon our network, we are now the 2nd largest travel agency in Brazil in terms of vacations. And so we package hotels and cars and obviously Azul Air, taking advantage of empty space or weekends. Aircraft don't fly that much on weekends. It's low utilization. There's no corporate demand on Saturday night. But there's great leisure demand on Saturday evening. And so you package all that together, and our vacations business charters from us about 2,000 flights every peak season just for them. So now we are the 2nd largest vacations business in Brazil as well. We have a loyalty business, of course, with 15 million loyalty members. And so all of these things are designed to extend competitive advantages. And so for us in the pandemic, cargo saved our bacon. Cargo went from 4% of revenue to 50% of revenue in the span of 2-3 months. And if we didn't have that, we wouldn't be alive. Now it's back to 10% of revenue, but it's not 4, right? 4 to 50 to 10. So it doubled in this time frame. And so you never know when you're going to need your competitive advantages. And I encourage all of you to dust open your book of advantages and see what's in it. And if it's not enough, build on it and create new ones, because you never know. And for us, it's absolutely critical.
Yeah, that's good. And I actually remember, talking of vacations, I remember the annual report in which David says that he was pushing you guys on vacations and you guys were resisting it, and he was proved right. So there you go. I think that speaks to, David's genius as well. Now, you did speak about all these different departments, right? And the fact that you need to have a set of competitive advantages. Now, you're the president, you have pretty much everything but, I want to say, aeropolitical affairs and some government strategy, I guess. So how do you ensure that all these different departments in your organization are in lockstep and they're working towards a common goal? How are they aligned with each other? Because in the end, yes, there is the customer and there's a revenue that comes from it. How do you ensure commercial alignment with all these different teams? Because all of them have different KPIs, right?
Yeah. Lots of WhatsApp groups. Lots and lots and lots of WhatsApp groups. But actually, my first boss at JetBlue taught me when I was an intern. He said, just when you think you're communicating enough, double it. And I repeat this every single day to my team. It's just a lot of communication, a lot of walking around. I mean, I don't do anything myself, right? I don't fly airplanes. I don't set fares anymore, thank God, for our own revenue's sake. I don't attend calls at the call center, so I don't really do anything. I don't have any day-to-day, I don't have a job. So I just try to make myself useful, and that's walking around and making sure people are communicating and aligned, and everybody always has a question, and just encouraging people to share as much as possibly can. And nobody should ever say they didn't know, right? That's kind of a taboo word. Well, find out, right? Be proactive. Nobody invited me. Again, be proactive, find out. And so just a lot of communication, having an overall philosophy. So again, like I said, one of our philosophies is we always take fare premiums, whatever we can, right? Always. If our network is giving us a competitive strategy, our pricing, our commercial always has to take advantage of that, right? It doesn't help if you have a network advantage, but commercial is giving corporate discounts whenever the hell they want, right? So all that has to be very, very aligned. And so, an overall philosophy, one example is we always take fare premiums. We usually fly low load factors, relatively lower load factors, because we don't like dilution. We're more likely to steal from ourselves than our competition. So, we have some philosophies that everybody kind of follows, if you will. But within that overall philosophy, everybody's free to do what they think is best. But lots of WhatsApp groups, lots of communication. And it's not, some of it is formal communication, some of it is meetings, but a lot of it is just walking around. We obviously respect the work from home, hybrid environment. We have some of it, but I would say that we haven't leaned into it. I think for our business, in our market, being together is really, really important, and making decisions in the moment with demand and with the market. And so a lot of delicious conversations, a lot of communication, some high-level philosophy, and just making sure everybody's aligned.
And I can attest to that. I've been to your Barueri offices many times. I've always seen him walking around, and most of the meetings I've had with him are stand-up meetings that last like 7-8 minutes.
That's the best way to keep it short.
Exactly, but pretty focused and to the point and really impactful. I've only had one sit-down meeting with him in the year and a half I've been traveling to Brazil back and forth. So that's a good point, and there's a certain informality, so I can attest to that. So I just want to quick switch track just a little bit for a quick brief question. I mean, we talked a lot about AI and ChatGPT. So the question is, are you doing anything with ChatGPT as a use case currently? Do you have any plans? Real quick, just to kind of pick your brain.
Look, I think we are very much in the infancy as an airline. Maybe the industry overall, but I think we are as well. So ChatGPT, no, we're not. I think we're looking at what the use cases are, maybe internal knowledge databases and things like that. With AI, we have some cool applications. The one I talked about this morning at the operation with the cameras. That's been really helpful. In fact, we've been able to reduce our turn times because now the jet bridge connects faster because the camera is telling us that it's taking so long. So that's been very, very interesting. We are using a little bit of AI on the hiring to improve the hiring process, finding candidates that have better profiles and better matches. We do have an AI-powered chatbot, which I frankly think all airline chatbots are terrible. I think they give very generic answers, and so I think ChatGPT could be something that really is powerful there. So I'd say we have some applications, but still very, very, very early in the stage.
That's nice. Again, I want to go back again. That was a technology question. I want to talk about culture. In business school, they'll always tell you that culture will eat swim circles around strategy, right? And I've been to your offices. It's a fairly unique culture. It feels like somewhere between a very large startup to almost like a family environment. So the question is, as you, in your Azul journey, how do you perceive the role of the company culture? Has it evolved? Has it changed from what you set it out to be? How do you see it going forward? And if you just want to spend some time talking about that.
So United, which is our partner, they actually own 8% of Azul through various transactions over time. They make a joke and they actually call us a cult, a non-violent cult, okay? So a friendly cult, a volunteer cult. But I mean, we do have a pretty special culture, I think. Culture is a competitive advantage. Culture allows us to have less employees per aircraft. Culture allows us to be more efficient. Culture allows us to have more revenue integrity. Culture allows us to spot fraud, for example, at the airports or the call center. So I think we do have a special culture. It's we don't have a department of culture. Culture is every single day, every interaction by everybody. And there's a saying that people join the company because of the company, but they leave because of their immediate supervisor, right? And so you really have to make sure it goes all the way up and down the organization. It's a lot of communication, a lot of interactions, a lot of openness and honesty. We are right now in the process of restructuring our debt. In the pandemic, all airlines, especially us, took on a lot of debt that now needs to be restructured. We're in that process. And there's noise in the market because then you just have to be honest about it. So I think honesty, transparency. We're a horizontal organization, so everybody's accessible to everybody. I'm always accessible, whether I'm here or there, it doesn't matter. I think that's an important thing as well. John, our CEO, talks to crew members every single day. If somebody has an aunt that passed away and they need some help, they'll call him and he'll help them out. So just trying to stay small. We're 14,000 employees now, 14,000 crew members, which, it's a lot for us. And we'll probably end the year at 15,000. Maybe, if I can help it a little bit less, but we'll see. We're trying to kind of be disciplined, but at least 14,500, something like that. So how to stay small while you grow is really, really important. So a lot of communication and small interactions every single day. HR is not going to give you culture. Your department of culture is not going to give you culture. It's every single day, every interaction builds on culture. And so that's what we try to do. And it is a competitive advantage. Our call center today handles 35% more calls per crew member than we did in 2019. We have 32 million passengers this year, the highest in our history, and our call center will never be smaller. Will never be smaller. Our airports are handling 25% more passengers per crew member than in 2019. Like I said, Claudia's revenue management team does not have 76% more people, right? Even though we're generating 76% more revenue. So it is a competitive advantage, our culture, but it's an incredible amount of work. It's the most work of all, actually, but it's also the most, it's the competitive advantage that's the most difficult to replicate. Anybody can buy an airplane, anybody can fly in your market, anybody can have low fares. It's easy. But to really replicate a culture that's lasting and sustainable, it's the most difficult, it takes the most work, but it's also the most difficult to replicate.
That's awesome. We're almost out of time, so I want to close it by saying, first of all, thanking you for taking the time to make the long journey, and taking the time for these 2 days. So we really appreciate it. We at Pros are thrilled to be part of your success story. We continue to build on it for many more years to come. Quick question for you is having seen the conference so far, what are your top 1 or 2 key takeaways that resonate with you in the Azul context?
Well, I love the presentation this morning about ChatGPT. It's the first time somebody's explained it in a way that I could understand. I just wish someone would explain Bitcoin in the same way, because I don't understand Bitcoin. And I've never seen a single video, and I've scoured YouTube that explains it, but so thank you for that. That was wonderful. I think, the phrase digital exhaust is going to be burned in my memory, and my digital team is right there. I'm going to tell them about digital exhaust as well. So that was really cool. I think the sense that I'm getting is that, there's a lot ahead of us in the progress that we need to make, whether it's willingness to pay, continuous pricing, offer and order. So we need to put those things in our roadmap and make sure that we execute to them. Whether, again, as Amit and said, whether it's now or 2 years from now doesn't really matter, but I think we need to prioritize that. So I think we're doing well, but we need to make sure we don't fall behind.
Thank you. I think we're just about right on time, so thank you very much, Abhi. I think that was a masterclass in airline, managing an airline, growing an airline, but also leadership and entrepreneurship. So we thank you for your time.
Thanks so much.
And good luck.
Thank you.
The rest of the
Thanks, everyone.
Please, congrats. Put your hands together. Thank you.